So in this segment, we're going to be talking about post-Brexit trade deals slower than promised. So this is about the government failing to reach their targets for getting free trade agreements. And obviously, we know a lot more about. I know a lot more about free trade agreements than I did a couple of years ago. Which is that free trade agreements doesn't necessarily mean the trade you do between countries is free. So the government is set to miss its target for securing post-Brexit trade agreements, as figures show a 15% fall in the number of UK exporters. At the 2019 election, the Conservative Party promised to get agreements covering 80% of UK trade by the end of this year, so 2022. The most recent figure suggests it will be 63%, and the vast majority of that will be rollover deals. FTAs are not the end-all and be-all. They help with trade, but there'll still be non-tariff barriers like customs fees, rules of origins, amongst other potential barriers. Even by taking away tariffs and quotas, it does not necessarily always give you an easy time to export into a market. Just because it says it's a free trade agreement does not make it free. A government source said a trade deal with the US has been crucial to meeting the target, but the Biden administration was not prioritising it. The government has also set a target this year to agree a free trade deal with India by Diwali on November 12th, and we're in December now, dog. So they missed that one. The US deal I don't think will happen due to the way Great Britain is messing around with the protocol. The US would play a lot of hardball in the negotiations, and there are a lot of moneyed interest that would like a cut of the UK. The US said a deal won't happen by 2030, and let's not forget Richard Neal, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, which governs trade. He said no. The Japanese deal was criticised earlier in the year after government figures showed exports in UK goods and services had fallen to that country in the past year. Now, this one is pretty interesting. I wonder if that's down to lower UK productivity, so the UK is producing and exporting less goods and I guess services as a whole, or is this down to the UK-Japan deal being worse than the EU-Japan deal? Japan are also looking to bring some manufacturing back to Japan, so that could be a factor, maybe all three. We have not really seen the full details of the UK-Japan deal, despite the Tories claiming it's so great they won't show us the details. They claim it's better than the EU-Japan deal, for example, but they'll never tell us what's in it. Former Environment Secretary George Eustace also criticised the Australia deal, arguing it's not actually a very good deal for the UK. Australia and New Zealand got exactly what they wanted: open access to export their agricultural goods. Yes, they'll face barriers, but they face similar barriers trading with other nations. I'm guessing they're good at dealing with third countries. They want to do less trade with autocratic nations like China. Anyways, geography will be their major problem. You know, if you look at the gap between New Zealand, Australia and the UK, it's huge, as Bernie Sanders would say, huge. A Department for International Trade source said, "We've set our sights high, but recognise to meet this ambition, we need a deal with the US, and it's clear the Biden administration is not prioritising negotiating trade deals." Sorry, it's a funny sentence. With other countries, resolving disputes like the steel and whiskey tariff issues, and pursuing agreements with individual US states. Now, you can't get individual trade deals with US states. It doesn't work like that. The US under Biden are looking at doing more trade wars with China. They're also looking at subsidising their own manufacturing and creating more agreements with the EU, but they seem to be struggling at balancing the two, being protectionist and free trade. Old Joe is an interesting character, that's for sure. He also told the WTO to get lost when it was found that Trump's steel tariffs broke WTO rules, and Biden said, "Go home, Jack." Separately, HM revenue and customs data showed the number of UK firms classed as exporters fell from 149,443 in 2020 to 126,812 in 2021, so a significant drop-off. David Overton runs Splash Maps, who produce fabric maps, including OS and Michelin maps that are waterproof. No idea who wants to buy these, but okay. They sell to consumers, but also to the military. Mr. Overton said they have always sold to other countries, predominantly the US, but also to Europe. Their third biggest export destination was Germany, but Mr. Overton says the company has ceased all trade with Germany now because of the Brexit changes, resulting in a 2 to 5% drop in turnover. He told the BBC he noticed all his exports to Germany were beginning to get bounced back to the UK. He realised this was due to an EU directive on plastics and waste in packaging, which Germany requires exporters to sign up to through a register called the LUCID, Lucid. We didn't know there was a registration process, he said. I think what the government could really do is pay for expertise to get these messages out there. That's kind of funny, the government paying for it. It's interesting that this company had experience in dealing with the US, a third country, but really struggled with Germany, another third country. Exports bouncing back is not a surprise. A business maybe not through their own fault, not being prepared for Brexit. Asking the government to pay for them to get a trade help is pretty funny. What is not funny is that they could cut production. They've lost 2 to 5% of sales. They might not need as many staff, which means potentially layoffs, and that would be sad because that's another Brexit negative. Exports fell in every nation and region of the UK, but the decline was steepest in the southeast of England, 23%. That's more of the Tory heartland, and the northwest of England, 15%, with the lowest decline being in Northern Ireland. The figures show Northern Ireland is the only part of the UK that remained in the EU single market for goods. Now, I wonder why Northern Ireland were not as impacted as the other regions. I wonder why. Tina McKenzie of the Federation of Small Businesses said firms were seeing a sustained suppression of exports since the UK's trade deal with the EU came into force. That's not surprising at all. SMEs don't have the resources to hire customs agents or set up the relevant accounts needed to trade with the EU, let alone get vet checks and anything else they might need for trade. It just eats into profit margins. If you make money via volume, doing large amounts of trade and small kind of profits of each small product, say, for example, if you're selling eggs, you're in for a rough time. Good luck, because that model is dying. The model of making profit via volume by exporting to the EU, very difficult if you're a third country. On Wednesday, International Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch said the UK should be doing better on trade, but was recovering from global factors such as COVID and the war in Ukraine. The issue is that we have messed up our supply chain so badly that getting in raw materials from the EU is way harder now, so that makes manufacturing harder. We cut ourselves off from a very skilled workforce with the end of freedom of movement, and the visa system is not great. And why wouldn't a skilled worker, a EU worker, just go to another country where they won't need a visa, so another EU-based country? But that's not even the kicker, because even if we got the US deal and an India deal over the line, it would not dent the lost EU trade. So we're going to kick it over to the Ben Shue clip I played previously. But this is really important here, people. This is what I want you guys to understand.
Deal with Japan, which adds to the previous EU one in some respects.
We don't. Again, the government haven't really shown any evidence of how much better the UK-Japan deal is compared to the EU-Japan deal.
So what's the overall economic impact of those? Well, let's use estimates from the Department for Trade's own published impact assessments. The Australia deal is judged to add around 0.08% to UK GDP, or around £2.3 billion.
Okay, £2.3 billion. Okay, not bad.
The Japan deal around 0.07%, or £1.5 billion.
And I'm just wondering where the UK government are getting this extra figure. Where does this 1.5 billion extra coming from compared to the EU-Japan deal?
The New Zealand deal, 0.03%, or around £800 million. This is all certainly worth having, but remember the context of Brexit, the UK leaving the EU single market and customs union. The Office of Budget Responsibility judges this will reduce long-run UK GDP by 4%, around £115 billion. And as you can see, those new trade deals don't come close to offsetting that damage.
That's wild, isn't it? And this for me is the biggest bit here, where the bit he goes on to.
But there could be other deals too, couldn't there? We're in the process of negotiating a free trade deal with India, the world's fastest growing economy. And although it's been put on the back burner, we were told a new US trade deal would be a great post-Brexit prize.
Good luck with that, Chief, honestly.
But look at the higher end estimates of how much even these deals would add to long-run UK GDP. For the India deal, it's 0.22% of GDP, or £6.2 billion. For a US deal, it's 0.16% of GDP, or £3.4 billion, the green bar there. So still far from compensating for the EU trade hit. And remember, this is using estimates of the government's own economists.
And that there you go. Kelly Badenoch, or whatever, how you pronounce her name, she can argue, we're going to get all these glorious free trade deals. You're not going to dent, unless you can make £115 billion worth of trade deals, you're not going to dent anywhere near that we've lost. And these are some of the biggest economies in the world here. You've got a US and an India deal thrown in there. And these are best case scenarios he's given you. He's a steel man argument. He's given a tremendous case of why the government are wrong here. So shouts out Ben Shue. I know I've played this clip already, but it's really important for people to understand that even if we get these mythical US and India trade deals, it's still not going to dent the problems that we have. The Australia and New Zealand deals aren't going to dent the problems that we have. And the simple case is the government can want more coverage of these FTAs in order to get this, the 83% figure that they've got somewhere up here. But the fact remains, 80% figure, but the fact remains free trade agreements don't necessarily give you free trade. There are still barriers in the way, and what we left was a frictionless trading area where you can export things to France, Germany, Italy very, very easily. Very, very easily, and that would help your domestic market. That would help your economy grow because you have a massive export market, but the problem is we've left it. And the fact is UK productivity is down. We have a massive staffing shortage. We have we have problems getting in raw materials and things like that. We're not an economy that produces much. Let's be honest now. Our money's in financial services, and that's going. The UK is in a very precarious spot, and we have no idea where we're going, and that's going to be a major problem. The UK is directionless. It's a ship without a mast, effectively. No idea where we're going. Not even the wind can carry us at this point. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.